My name is Alex Wiederholt, and today I'm going to talk to you about the history of John Deere tractors. By the end of my speech, my audience will know more about John Deere and the difference between certain tractor models. John Deere is not only a farm machinery company, but a way of life to many farmers like me. My biggest passion and hobby in my life is being around green and yellow iron. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been around it. My grandpa used it, my dad used it, I intend on using it. Fun little story, when I was in kindergarten, the only spelling test I ever missed a point on was because I misspelled deer like D-E-A-R and spelled it D-E-E-R-E. So that just shows how much I've been around it. The reason I believe this is important is because people don't know where their food comes from anymore. They don't know how it's made. They don't know what's involved in making it. So I just figured I'd inform the audience a little bit about that, make ag aware. Before we start, I'd like to tell you what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the two-cylinder era. We're going to talk about the new generation of power. We're going to talk about the sound guard era and the new breed of power era. To start any history, you got to start at the beginning. So I just thought I'd touch base. John Deere was founded in 1837 by John Deere. He made plows. He didn't start making tractors until 1918. And at that time, he bought Waterloo Boy, and he contracted them out to build tractors for him for 5 years. And he started out with his first model, the Model D. It was a two-cylinder engine, which is a hit-and-miss engine, which we'll show an example of that. You can hear why they call it a hit-and-miss. You can hear it firing each individual time, which makes that pop noise. That's good. And actually, two-cylinder engines were called Johnny Poppers because you could hear that each specific firing. A couple years later, in 1934, the Model A came out. It was a row crop tractor. It was the answer to the farm all. It could straddle rows. It had a little brother called the B, which was physically smaller. It came out the next year. These were the most popular models in John Deere's history. In 1949, the Model R came out, which was the first diesel-powered John Deere. It was more fuel efficient and more powerful than a gas engine, which helped make the farmer money. In 1953, a new modeling system came out, along with a new styling system. The 60 and 70 series came out, and also they had 40s and 50s and 80s, but those weren't as popular. They were essentially the same tractor as the previous. They just added things like power steering and power brakes. The last of the series was the 30 series, which marked the end of the two-cylinder era. They just kind of gave a sneak peek of what was to come. They added styling, like fenders from the new era that was coming, but nobody knew what was going on. Basically, Deere used the same design for 40 years. That platform was getting kind of obsolete. So something had to come along, and it was going to be big. They actually worked on this project for 7 years, and it was the biggest project other than a military project that was ever designed. And in 1960, John Deere came out with a new generation of power. Completely different from anything John Deere had done before. They had new styling, and they had a new power plant. They had 4 and 6 cylinder engines, which ran smoother and had more output, which made them more powerful, which was a better deal for the farmer, so they could get more done. They came out with the 1010, the 2010, the 2510, the 3010, the 4010, and a year later the 5010 in 1961. They had power brakes, standard. They had a foot clutch, standard. They had a synchro range transmission, standard. They had a fully independent PTO, standard. They had closed center hydraulic, standard, and they also had all the controls in a center console for ease of use. In 1964, Deere came out with the 20 series, which was just slight improvements. They had a power shift transmission added then for easier use of the transmission, and a diff lock, which helps put power to both wheels so it doesn't slip as much. In 1968, John Deere came out with 4520, which was the first turbocharged tractor for Deere, which helped increase fuel efficiency and increase power, all at the same time being less stressful on the engine. And all around this time, Deere was becoming so popular it actually surpassed International Harvester in sales in 1963, which is a good thing. After the 4520, in 1971 came the 4620 and 4320 to give more size options for the farmer. And a little note, 4320 is my favorite tractor. Last but not least, the 6030, which is here, was the last of the new generation style tractors. It was kind of an oddball tractor because it came out during Generation 2. It was basically a 5020 of the turbocharger. And those tractors were such a big success that it really helped Deere become first rate. They'd always been under International. So they'd started coming out with new innovations. For instance, farmers had always been exposed to the elements. And in 1973, Deere came out with the solution to this, spawned a new generation, Generation 2. In 1973, they came out with Sound Guard body, which was styled to give the farmer more comfort. The cabs had air conditioning, heat, radio, and they're designed to decrease noise from the engine and less heat. And they used those till 1978, then the 40 series came out, and that's when they came out with bigger engines, powertrains. In 1983, the 50 series came out. They had front wheel assist, helped with traction. And in 1992, the 60 series came out, and they gave a sneak peek at styling for what was to come. They had a cab-mounted muffler exhaust system right there. The EPA was becoming more strict on emissions rules, so Deere had to come up with something new, make sure they complied with these laws. So in 1994, going into 1995, they came out with an all-new breed of power. The 5, 6, 7, and 8,000 series tractors. They had computer-controlled engines for cleaner burning, and every series after the 1,000 series came new additions to emissions to make sure they met with those standards. And pretty well that's what gets you to the present. So in conclusion, John Deere's had a rich history of making tractors. I hope I could enlighten you about some facts about John Deere.